Sorry, technology, sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. First of all, I'd like to thank the STAR for this opportunity to speak to everyone today. Recognizing my colleagues, veterans in the field of education, I am a small one by comparison. Small both physically and in age and experience, but I hope that I can bring some varied input into this discussion. I was invited today to speak about the international schools, and particularly about the International Baccalaureate. And as espoused before and said before, we're going to come across a lot of similar points. So I'm going to try and focus on just sharing about the International Baccalaureate, particularly, and what we do in it. It's a very interesting area, and not many people know about this, so I think I've probably got a really hard job on my hands. But let's begin now. First, just a little bit about myself. I'm a doctor. I got trained in Manchester, and as the picture shows, I'm also a trainee. I was trained to be a psychiatrist. I've also worked as a teacher. I've taught in two different programs, something called the Middle Years program and something called the Diploma program. I'll explain exactly what these two mean in a bit. I've also run the IB Diploma program in Fairview International School right now. We're a network of 4 schools across Malaysia, running all of the IB programs exclusively. So I put a massive word cloud because as I started researching, I realized that there's a whole bucket where loads and loads of words and jargon that I could throw at you, and it wouldn't really make much sense to just go through all of this. And I can't do this in 20 minutes. I couldn't do it in 1 hour. It would never truly get everything across. But what I did was then choose a few select stories for you. And I was taught most of my life by stories. My father teaches me by the stories. And so I will share with you 2 stories. And let's see what we actually pick up from this. These are true stories. I'm a medic by profession, a doctor, and these are real. When I was in Manchester, it's a really tough school to get into for medicine particularly. You need 4 A's and more sometimes, yeah. It's a really hard school to get into, and happy to say we were number 3 when I was still there. We're now number 5, unfortunately. We've come down a bit since I left. Maybe it was me. But one really interesting about that program was a lot of students could not survive the program. There were quite a lot of students who did not manage to come out of that program. When you compare that to the other medical programs, the fail rate was strange. There seemed to be quite a few medical students who cannot make it through. And when we consider, these guys are really smart. They have 4 A's, right? And they come from well-screened backgrounds, so on and so forth. What's stopping them? Now, I'll give you a bit of history first before I tell you about this. But in traditional medicine, if you want to learn about the brain, I tell you about the structure of the brain first, the bones and tissues and all that sort of stuff. Then I tell you about how it works, the neurons, the electricity running around the place, which part's responsible for what. And then I tell you about the disease. Notice I use the word tell 3 times. In the new system of medicine, which they recently introduced, they said, let's do a case study approach. So I will give you a case study of a person with a headache. And all of you students out there, so you can see the nice facilitator in his tie, you say, all of you students, go and tell me, what do you need to know? Then go and find out what you don't know. This, in essence, was the beginning of a very, very revolutionary approach that didn't really exist in medical schools before. We were told what to know. If you want to know about the brain, my lecturer tells me everything I need to know in 1 hour. He gives me a handout, and I read through 13 pages in the textbook. I look at this atlas, and ta-da! But you're telling a medical student now to go and find out. This resulted in a lot of students saying things like, I don't know what to learn. What textbook am I supposed to learn this out of? You didn't teach me enough. You're cutting back on costs, aren't you? You're not lecturing me properly. You're keeping me. Blah, blah, blah. All these kind of things start coming up. Frustration. I have special insight into emotional states from my history. All this frustration coming out. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly what happened and why this happened. I ask you instead to reflect upon this and why it's happening. This is a sickness that's actually pervading or happening right across every sector, not just medicine, every one of them. Moving on a little bit, I'll tell you a second story. Then this is even more amusing. When I was teaching as well, I was still teaching, I had a student come up to me and say, "Teacher, you're a bad teacher." Actually, he didn't say teacher, he said "Jer." "Jer, you're a bad teacher." I said, "Why? I taught you everything you need to know." And his reply, to which most parents should be able to relate to, was, "The questions in your revision session didn't come out." Next one. "Teacher, exam coming." Yes, it's coming, you know. It's Park, the kid's name was Park, he's Korean. Park, yeah, the exam's coming, what's wrong? "Teacher, which page do I study?" Oh my gosh. Which exercises must I finish? Okay, these two things, hopefully, it's beginning to draw some insight into the depth of this problem. It's not superficial. It's a very deep, ingrained problem in our educational systems, not just here, but right across the world. Because when I was working in medicine, there were doctors coming from every nation whom, when approached by a patient, and when you see a patient come to the ER, the first thing you've got to say is, "What do I not know about this guy? What questions do I have to ask him? And then what kind of possibilities do I have?" Eliminate the possibilities and come to an end. Nowhere in there can you put in, "Patient tells me everything I need to know, I follow the flow chart, and my medical textbook is going to tell me the answer." No chance. And every single doctor, okay, from every single nation, because in the UK we had an opening of the EU, and we had truckloads of doctors from every country around, and I worked with all of them. Everybody had the same problem. We just couldn't do it. And it took nearly a year for most people to actually get their head around, to figure out, what am I supposed to be doing? I'm supposed to be asking questions. Okay, there's a lot of problems going on. There's a lot of insight you should be developing right now. You should be reflecting and appreciating all of this. So, I wanted to tell you, what's wrong with our kids today? The answer, I cannot answer this one. This one I have to leave to the serious educationalists. I'll tell you a bit about the IB though. Okay? The IB is split into 4 parts, but I'll go through only 3 today. It makes it easier. First part's called the primary school program, primary years program, similar to your standard 1, standard 6, same stuff. By the way, I'm Malaysian, and I was trained in an international school in Malaysia. I'll give you some interesting story about that one too. Primary years program, standard 1, standard 6, pretty straightforward. Middle years program, Form 1 to Form 5, straightforward. Diploma program, Form 6, 2 years, same thing again. So you can see how the age matches right across. The IB diploma is not affiliated with any government. In fact, it's based in Geneva, it's got another headquarter in Cardiff, it's got another headquarter in Hong Kong, another one in Singapore, another one in Bethesda in the US. It's all over the place. They don't follow anybody. They don't follow any rules. And they're governed by nobody else except themselves. So they are the people that come to decide what can and cannot be done in the IB come from absolutely everywhere. Okay? The next thing you need to know about the International Baccalaureate. The International Baccalaureate is the overarching umbrella that has all these 3 programs. The next thing you need to know about this is we use other people's curriculums to deliver our program. So in the middle years program and in the primary years program, the standard, the junior school and the middle school, the Form 1 to Form 5, we'll be using bits of Malaysian science. We can if we want to. We can use British English, we can use American physics, any way it goes. And we are free to use whichever syllabi we choose. Okay? We can also sit whichever exams we choose to after that as well. So there's a huge amount of variety. Back in ours, we run pretty much, Fairview is a formerly Cambridge International School, so we still run the O-level, so all of our kids do the IB and they sit the O-level exams, just to be sure. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you only certain aspects of the International Baccalaureate. This may seem repetitive, but please forgive me. First thing I want to talk to you about is a word called inquiry. And the reason why I go through only these words is there are many things, but I believe these are the ones that will appeal to your heart most. And they matter a lot to us. What is inquiry? I'll give you a nice little easy definition of this one. Where students direct and lead their own learning from their own queries of the topic. So, this will naturally invite them to consider the concept from multiple points of view. It's a big mouthful. Let's break it down a little bit. Let's say a PYP kid, so he's standard 1, standard 5 years old to about 10 years old. He's going to learn about celebrations. Typical situation is the kid's going to learn about festivals, foods, dates, what, which, when. Notice the words I'm going to use here. What food, what festival, which country, when did it happen, when does it happen. But when you, in the International Baccalaureate, teachers are mandatorily have to do something called open inquiry, and we have to demonstrate it in our lesson plans. Every single one of them has to show it, without doubt. They must do this. And that's when we come to the next two fun questions. We go from what, which, when. How do we celebrate? What would happen if your son or daughter, age 6, asks you, how do you celebrate? Daddy, can I dance and celebrate? Can I sing and celebrate? This is beginning to draw some weird things in my head. And then they will definitely, inevitably come to the next question of, why do we celebrate? If you replace the word celebrate with every single subject, why do we explore genetic science? Why do we learn about socialism? Why do we do this? How do we do that? When your level of questioning goes to that level, students think completely differently. Gone is the day when they will say, what do I learn? Because they won't use the word what. They will use the word why do I learn? How do I learn more effectively? Why, how? And these are the basic concepts of inquiry that are so strongly ingrained in all of our programs. If you can't demonstrate that you're not doing inquiry in your class, the IBO will come. And by the way, the IBO does regular checks in schools every few years, and they are nasty. And what they do is, they'll take away your cert, and they say, you haven't demonstrated how you're going to do open inquiry. And I say, that ain't good enough. No. They're kind of like an ISO, for people who know what ISO is. They'll just come in every once in a while and do a massive checkup. And that's the IB. And we love that, because they maintain the standards so high. It's really fun to work with. Recently, I had the opportunity to come across an amazing article. It's a bit of a mouthful, but once I say it and summarize a bit, you'll definitely get it. Think about the problems we give our kids in the classroom. They're clearly defined, 1 + 1 is 2. They have one discipline, maths, English, science, and they have one answer. When is the last time that you saw, in your real life, a problem that was only had one answer, that was only one discipline, and are so clearly defined? In our workplace, for everyone that works, your problem is never clearly defined. There's never a right answer. There's always a possibility. This one could be better than that one. There's multiple answers. You never know. We have to define our own question by ourselves. So why is our assessments doing this? Why are all of our questions looking like, what, state the definition of this, calculate this, list this one here? Doesn't work. That's why in the IB, what we do is that students are assessed. I use the word summative, because summative means it goes into their final grade, which means it's dead serious. They are assessed not just on a paper qualification, that's just one of the many we use, but they are assessed based on their things like teamwork. Can you assess teamwork? I say yes, because I know exactly how to do it already. Can you assess things like attitude? Yes. When you write it down carefully, and there's a way that IB magically does it, we need to learn how to do it. When you do that, you can assess this. Can you assess a presentation skill? Yes. Can you assess a student's knowledge on genetics using a presentation? You can. And that's how real life works. If I can write a 3,000-word thesis on genetic experimentation on Dolly, does it mean that I can share this with anyone at all? If not, how are you telling me that my knowledge of Dolly and genetic experimentation is good? 80% good, for example. What does 80% mean? It doesn't mean anything. It just means I'm 80% right. No. Assessment is varied in here, in the IB. And it's made summative, which means it comes towards the end point. So we take it dead serious. Let me share with you some more stuff. In the middle years program, which is the Form 1 to the Form 5 stage, I want to share with you something called relevance. Now, it's been spoken, I think the other way of saying it is real-world application. That's the other way. But this is what I'd like to share with you. The MYP encourages students to embrace and understand the connection between traditional subjects and the real world. Basically, if you read about Dolly, I'm going to show the picture, I'm going to let you read the article, look at Dolly, look at what's happened, look at the other experiments, and then become a critical and a reflective thinker. And I'm going to show you how they become critical and reflective thinkers as well. We give meaning and give this sort of relevance through investigating real-world issues. If you're going to learn about genetic experimentation, you're going to learn about the 8 examples that I've got ready for you. Don't bother learning about the theories if you can't apply this. And what this will do, when you learn about the context of your theory, when you learn about the environment that I'm trying to teach you theory about, excuse the stuttering, is that you will develop a positive attitude and a sense of personal and social responsibility. You will appreciate what's actually happening in my world. It's not just something on paper. We asked a little girl the other day who came in from another country. I asked her, please draw a chicken. She drew a drumstick. What is this? You called yourself? What happened? You know, didn't they show you a chicken? Or maybe a picture of a chicken and they couldn't show you the chicken? What happened? She was so disconnected. This is one of the big problems of today, and this is just chickens. Do students learn theories and just learn theories for the sake of theories? I think there is this problem. And this will finally, once they get the context, once they get that responsibility through, they will lead them to go from academic knowledge to action. That's the really important part, because you can know stuff. You can understand things. You can even feel for it, but it doesn't mean anything unless you take action upon it. And that's precisely how the lesson plans are designed. We design the lesson plan so that you are taught the information through an inquiry way. You ask the questions, then we bring you into deep understanding by chewing lots of crazy questions, the hows and the whys, really chew it up nicely. We make you apply it in all sorts of different ways and take action. If you learn about O negative and how rare it's going to be, go and organize a blood donation drive, please. And that's precisely what they'll be doing. I'm not going to give you the examples of how many they're doing because it's way too many. So I'm going to move on. I'll show you later how to find out more information. Now I want to talk about the IB Diploma program. I'm running out of time, so I'll be quick. The first thing I want to tell you is this is possibly the most preferred pre-university qualification in the world, and I'm going to show you statistics. I'm not going to just go off the error of my words over here, so I'm going to show you if this is going to work. Alright, I can't use the pointer apparently. If you read the column in the middle, that's your chance of getting into this university flat of any pre-university qualification you can get your hands on. Harvard University, 10%. 7%. If you're an IB diploma student, go to the column one step to the left, and that just went up from 7 to 10. Interesting. Look at Berkeley University. Look at Brown University. You'll find that many of these numbers don't just go from 1 to 2%. I put Harvard in because I got to show the whole thing. We're looking at 9 to 18%. Brown, strong university, great place. Double your chance of getting in. Stanford, 7 to 15. I want to go to Stanford. Columbia, 9 to 13. Berkeley, 26 to 58. And these are the toughest universities, by the way, because the ones that I didn't highlight, those are a bit low on my personal rankings, and those jumps are massive. If anybody wants more information, I can definitely give it. This whole thing is referenced to excellent statistics that have been collected. This trend, I'm not going to show this, but this trend reflects right across the States, Australia, and the UK. If 100 A-level students apply to the UK to go to the top 20 universities, 20 will get in. If 100 IB diploma students apply to the top 20 universities in the UK, 44 will get in. I say this with absolute confidence because the work was already done, and I don't need to espouse any further. But what I'd love to share with you is this. Why is it so amazing? We've got all these crazy skills built around inquiry, relevance. There's a lot more behind it I'm not going to share today because it takes too long. But the theory of knowledge is one amazing thing in the IB diploma. It encourages thoughtful and purposeful inquiry into the different ways of knowing and into the different kinds of knowledge. The idea is, in the theory of knowledge class, you get 100 hours of a teacher hammering away and teaching you and discussing and questioning and debating and arguing. How do we know what we know? How do I know that the color green that I see is really the color green and not the color 학생. If I call it color 학생 and you call it green, who's right? Do you have more right to call it green than I have to call it 학생 or kuning? Who's more right? Who's got the right to be right? Can we even begin to approach these questions? I say the word color, let's extend this onto the word freedom. Are we free? Can you attack this issue in the same way, systematically, insightfully, and wise, not brash, in this manner? Students go through questions again and again. There are so many of these questions. I'll just put 3. What's lost in translation from one language to another? You translate something from English to Hebrew and back to English. What happens? Can you answer that? Whose history are we studying? Japanese history of Japan in the World War II? Chinese history of Japan in the World War II? Or Malaysian history of Japan in the World War II? Because I know my grandfather's going to say something different. Should scientists be held morally responsible for their discoveries? Somebody discovered the A-bomb. Should he be responsible for that? Somebody else discovers the worst virus in the world that can wipe out the entire human race. Is he morally responsible for his action? Should he be morally responsible? Many people say yes, no. The idea is not to get to the end. The idea is, can you begin to consider the possibility? Can you construct a sensible argument? Or at least come up with a way of getting there? This, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't teach you information. It doesn't even teach you skills, although skills is great in here. It teaches you wisdom. And this wisdom is priceless. I recently was taught a bit of Mandarin by another Chinese person. He taught me, and I feel very disconnected from my Chinese world as well, because I grew up in an international school. 读死书. Thank you. I'm so terrible, I can't even say it right. Every Chinese person in this room should know what that means already. Right? I didn't learn that, right? But I can completely appreciate what it means. And that is what I'm trying to tell everybody in this room. There's a way that you can do things. You can study book until you die, or you can study a dead book. Whichever way, it doesn't work. I'm going to finish off quickly like this, okay? If you think the IB diploma is that fantastic, and it gets students to universities around the world with such excellence, and it just kills the competition whenever kids do it, what would happen if your kid was educated for 13 years prior in the same kind of education? Would he just have that 2 years worth of benefit, or would something completely crazy happen to it? Reflect upon that, and I think that's more than enough. The IB is a continuum where one is structured straight into the next. Skills of presentation are built at the highest level and tiered downwards, one step at a time, in a very organized fashion. The way that you are assessed to present in your junior school takes all the way up through your diploma program. And finally, can't get through everything else, but if you want to find out any more, I'll be at this booth over here on the hall too. I apologize if I've gone over time, but thank you very much.
Thank you.